Daily Logic Check. Thank you for watching Daily Logic Check. I'm Elizabeth Vargas, your host, with my co-host, Andrew Vargas. The topic today is a very serious topic. It's an epidemic. It's a massive problem going on throughout the entire country, in fact, throughout the entire world. It's substance abuse. I have invited a very special friend on set today to share with you and share with me his experience with substance abuse within his family. And everyone knows that we have had it in our family, and most families have had it at some point in their families. I have Darren Anthony Carroll here today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here.
No, we're very honored to have you here and have you share your story with my audience. And just you being here and sitting in that chair is a testament to your recovery from what happened to you. And I think that Andrew and I, we've had substance abuse issues within our family significantly. They're raging. And I think it needs to be spoken about. And it's not a topic that we normally would speak about on this podcast, but when I met you, we'd known each other for how long?
Couple of years now, at least 3 maybe or 4.
Yeah, through Coachella.
Yes, since right out our first shows after the pandemic, actually.
Yeah,
I think so.
And I never knew about your story until we sat there one morning and you told me what happened to you, and I sat back and went, this story has to be told. And I think that your story is going to help so many others, and whatever you don't want to talk about today is fine. Whatever you can talk about is great. And just know that we're here to help others understand. If you're going through a family member that is having substance abuse issues, or you might think that they might, what are the signs, and what did you go through that might help somebody else? So you work in the music industry, or I should say the festival industry. So what is your background? As far as you're from California, right?
Mm-hmm. I grew up in Los Angeles.
So you're a local. Is your whole family from here?
No, originally from New Jersey.
Okay, so you're
East Coast Italian, Sicilian background.
No kidding. That's the nice hair you got going on. Okay.
I fit the part.
Yeah, and you got the glasses, a little mobster. Okay, we can handle it.
I know, that movie just killed my whole look.
Pigeonholed you.
yeah, I know, right? You had to say Sicilian. You know Sicilians. But so is your whole family back east, or?
No, most of them are here or spread out a little bit, yeah.
Okay, so you have a family unit here.
Yes.
A large family? Do you have brothers and sisters?
I do. I have a brother and a sister. But,
okay.
My brother's in Hawaii, my sister's in Arizona.
Okay, so they're not California. They just didn't want to live here. They said, "I'm out."
Yeah, I think they were ready for a change a while ago.
Or maybe less taxes. I don't know. Just
Hawaii is not less taxes.
Oh, it's not?
No.
It's expensive. But yeah, I think they just wanted a change.
Yeah.
And California is expensive, but
you stayed here, and is it because? So I met you through working with Golden Voice, working with the guys over at that whole thing. You helped my community, and you helped all my guests, and you're always right there for us. But I never really knew exactly what you did. But you do work in the music industry, and how long have you been doing that?
I started independently in the area where I grew up, Hermosa, Manhattan Beach.
Okay. And that's where you live now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Still live there.
Or just tell everybody where you live. Let's stalk you. Just kidding.
Yeah. And so by chance, through some circumstantial happenstance, one of my best friends at the time was also a DJ. And we started doing teen events in our area.
Oh.
And then progressed to...
What do you mean teen events? Like just
DJ bands.
Okay,
with non-drinking,
like roller skating parties or what? Or am I aging myself?
No, that probably would have been cool. But no, dance parties.
Oh, okay.
Dance parties. Okay. And then progressed to 21 and over events.
Okay.
And
what year was this?
A while ago.
Roughly.
I'm old.
Okay.
Put it that
so
way.
Anyway.
And it was a magical time in LA. And just through sheer luck, I stumbled upon success doing this. It was a time in a place when I guess there was a demand for what we were doing. My friend who was my DJ was an amazing DJ, and I was booking bands, and the combination of things just worked out really well. And I hit a point where there really wasn't room. I hit a ceiling in the area where the small town where I grew up. And so I eventually went on to do bigger things in Hollywood and downtown LA.
And what do you mean by bigger things?
Like larger events with
Okay.
multiple rooms and multiple stages and genres.
Oh, like those
bands,
big clubs
DJs.
that they have.
Yeah,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
like 3,000 people through the door every weekend type.
Well, like,
events.
what was that called? No, that was Vegas.
Yeah, we some of the more well-known locations that we did events at were Roxbury,
Yeah.
Century Club. Yeah.
You got the rock and rollers in Roxbury.
Yeah, we had a whole combination. That was more of the Hollywood A-list kind of vibe.
And you got the talent in the door, basically. Was that your job to basically talent scout and get them in and book them and
Yes. So interestingly, a lot of what we did was labeled as weeklies. So we would do one night a week. So our night at Roxbury, for example, was Tuesdays. And it was a hot night. And
Yeah.
we would bring our own formula and our own promotion.
So you're your own promoters for
our
that
own
night.
crowd. Yeah.
Okay.
So part of what we did was promotions, Hollywood style DJs and bands, and bring our following. And then when we did the larger events, multiple rooms, we would collaborate with other partnerships and bring in DJs and bands as well, but it was just on a larger scale, more of an underground vibe, but 21 and over. So we would use a lot of the same elements, lighting, special effects, DJs. We would that underground popular raves we're doing or after hours we're doing in one area, and then we would bring in a more open format and well-known DJs, and we mixed it up. And so
full-on promotional company.
Right,
Like,
and
did
when
everything.
you stick to 21 and over, you're dealing with venues that are more along the legal lines, and you're not dealing with the younger rave crowd, which is what we preferred. And
What made you more money, the younger crowd or the older crowd?
Traditionally, the older crowd makes more money just because there's alcohol
But
sales.
for you though, I mean,
For
'cause
me?
you don't get alcohol sales. Or did you get a percentage of the
In
alcohol
some
sales?
locations you do, and some locations you don't. Every
Everything's
situation's different. Yeah.
Did you get free
Whatever.
beer at least?
Pardon?
Did you get free beer? Because I was a promoter for a while.
Yeah.
My bands didn't even get beer.
I
it was
handed out a lot of drink tickets. Let's put
Okay.
it that way. One for you. I was like, Oprah, you
yeah,
get
you were
one.
like the
You get one.
man.
You
Some
get
girls
You
are
get a
like,
drink.
"Hi, can I have a
you get a
ticket?" You're like,
drink.
"Fine."
Then when the girls found out you were the one holding the drink tickets, they're probably nice to you.
Yeah. And, honestly, this was a really magical time in LA history.
Yeah.
We're talking early 90s.
I remember.
So, before the internet, really kicked in, before cell phones, and then obviously during the whole
Duran
evolution
Duran,
of all that. Yeah, it was a little after the 80s, but definitely had a special moment in the history of clubs and events in LA. I had partners that went on to be very successful recording artists. People that worked with us went on to be. We had a network. The company was called. I started was called Artist Groove Network.
Artist Group Network.
Groove.
Okay.
Artist Groove and
Groove. Okay.
Yeah, Groove.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because it was made up of all artists who were pursuing some form, actors,
So cool.
musicians, DJs. It was really special. And, some of the people that I worked directly with were Gwen Stefani, Tony Kanal, no doubt. They were a big part.
Wait, did you work with the Viper Room? Is it called the Viper Room up there?
The Viper Room was just starting to get around as I was traversing out of that industry.
Because Gwen Stefani's known for going there.
Yeah, Gwen is great. And then, a lot of the friends I'm still in touch with have gone on to, they did, Herb Magazine was a really well-known art and fashion, very LA-based magazine. Raymond Roker was, and he's gone on to be pretty big time in the media world. He worked with us on Golden Voice and AEG for many years. And the first label, Moonshine Records, that brought electronic music to the States.
Yeah.
Were my partners.
Oh, weren't they from London?
Yeah, they were originally from the
UK.
from Europe,
Yeah.
UK, and so really special roots. In hindsight, just hearing myself talk about it,
So great.
thinking back, it's pretty exceptional, and it's an amazing time. And I feel like I'd love to, revisit that. And there are the stories that some of these.
Without cameras always filming you.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's none of this where you had to
Now
care.
now everybody's on guard because back then there was no evidence of what you were going to do.
They should start clubs like that again, where you did no phones, just enjoy yourselves like raves.
Yes, and it's amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
you name it, most of the celebrities were there doing their thing, just dressed casually, no one really paying attention, dancing, or Prince would come and sit right in front of the band and watch them all night, and he would give the DJs his first new releases, and it was a really special time. And then Madonna's dancers were always there, and Madonna would show up. It was just, I don't know, and not that those matter so much, all the names and the celebrities, but it was like a nucleus, like a brewing,
You can tell
situation.
he's been in the business forever. He's like, I'm not name dropping. It's not like they.
Well, I hear myself.
You can't
I'm
stand
like, that
people name
sounds.
dropping.
You don't want to make it sound like that was the only thing
You're
that
not
was
the
good about
industry
it.
name dropper.
No, because some of my dearest, the most special people, they went on to be dentists or went on to be parents, and it doesn't really matter what they did. But but when you think about LA and the network, I can think about different people who went on to start Frankie Jeans or went on to become the guitarist for Guns N' Roses. And the reason why that's special is because when they were at socializing and attending our events, you didn't really think of those things. Half the time I didn't know who they were anyway. So in hindsight, thinking about that they were there, in some ways, LA story-wise, it made it a little more special, I guess. So it was a really special time. And then through some circumstances beyond my control, I went on to open a restaurant. And actually, Gwen and Tony were one of the several really well-known investors that I feel very grateful for their support.
What restaurant was it?
It was a short-lived restaurant.
It's okay. Well, that's normal.
Yeah, it was an amazing concept. It was called Eco Cafe, and actually, it was one of the original healthy type.
I was gonna say, you mean like eco, like eating healthy?
Yeah, there wasn't very much. It was more something you would see in Berkeley or somewhere else.
Oh yeah, so organically grown.
It was very one of
everything.
the only menus in LA that had organic
Mustard seed.
Yeah,
avocado toast.
Yeah, it was a cool concept. Yeah,
I'm like, I'm gonna.
No, exactly.
But this was quite a while ago, so it was
Quinoa.
new. Now it's
it
it's
was
a common thing.
94.
So
I was in my early 20s.
Way ahead of its time.
So, I would say I wasn't the first.
For the local.
In general, as far as the curve, the trend, it was ahead. Obviously, there were people doing it well before me. So that I would never take credit for that. But it was an interesting time, and everything was built either with recyclable or recycled materials. It was a really special place. We all the tables were made out of used garage doors. The chairs were old school wooden chairs that we recycled and refurbished.
Yeah.
So it was this concept. Nothing went in a drain. Everything was taken out and we tried to recycle it. It was very progressive. I did some studying in the food industry and how our food was made and produced and manufactured, and the animal treatment and all these things way back then in the early 90s. And I was reading and learning, and I was actually quite surprised because hamburgers and milk were like my go-to food staple.
Right. A little cheese on there, a little dairy.
Cheese, absolutely. Cheeseburgers. I was a cheeseburger guy.
You're talking to one.
Yeah, I miss I can't eat cheeseburgers really anymore because I had a heart issue.
Okay.
So it's depressing.
It is depressing. I feel for you. So on top of that, the environmental ways that we did things were also much of an impact, negative impact in association with the food, how we build things. So my stepdad, I never met my biological father. He was a mafia boss, by the way.
Ah, go
Really?
figure.
Really?
It's the
That's a
glasses.
whole nother subject matter. Which I didn't really know much about. And my mom had incredible stories. And
Your mafia dad just spread a seed of glory, and here you are. Okay, anyway.
That's gotta go.
Apparently.
That's a great story.
apparently.
It's a great.
It's a great start.
That's
today.
another show.
It's a great flex. It's a great flex in a small group of friends. Well,
Yeah,
Well,
don't fuck with me, okay?
It's interesting because if it wasn't that I had this success with the events, no one would have even thought twice about backing this concept.
Right.
But ironically, 2 weeks or a week after opening, a venture capitalist came in and said, if you keep this going for 12 months, I will invest in this and we will franchise the hell out of it. I don't know if I could say that.
Yeah,
but-
yeah.
Oh, yeah, no.
I just said
Yeah.
that. Yeah, don't worry
Okay,
about
we will franchise this everywhere. You're on to something. Just get it dialed in and call me in 12 months.
No
and
shit.
It lasted 9 months.
oh man.
Daily Logic Check.
But you still had your promotional business,
I still had
Artist
that.
Groove.
Right, and to be honest, it was when Gwen and Tony and No Doubt were. I'm giving you an example because most people are like, "Well, you had Gwen and Tony, like you could have fixed anything." And
Yeah.
it was about 6 months to a year before their first big album came out.
Oh, wow, okay.
We were listening to the demo or the
Really?
recordings of that album when they would come and visit and have meetings with
That's
us.
so cool.
And I'm only bringing them up because, Tony went on to, and I believe he still is a very serious vegan, where he fights for animal rights in
Yeah.
major ways. And I can't say whether Gwen has practiced vegan or vegetarian, but back when I did this, no one was vegan or vegetarian. No one. So, and I wasn't even vegan.
Right, you're eating burgers.
I was just trying. Yeah, I was
Trying to be healthier. Just trying
I
to be
was
healthier.
just trying to show that there are other ways to eat if you choose to, and that are healthier than what.
Are you vegan now or no?
No.
Okay, yeah. I'm like, I like my steak.
I tried it, and I actually didn't feel, after a period of time, I didn't feel as healthy.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
I think a lot of it has to do with individual body chemistry.
If your body can digest,
but
right?
Everybody's different. I do not eat meat as frequently
neither
as
do
I
I.
used to, but in general, my body craves it.
But I crave now, for some reason, like tomatoes and cucumbers and olive oil and vinaigrette. I crave that clean vegetable right now. My body's
Right.
craves it. I never craved tomatoes before. I'm like, give me tomatoes.
No, my body.
So
craves
it's just
cheeseburgers
listening
and
to your
fries.
body,
And why can't you eat it?
No, it's because I had heart issues, and they say I need to cut more fat out, and less cholesterol, and all that fun stuff.
But our family lives
it's
forever,
recent,
and Andrew's
very
the only
recent.
one who eats burgers all the time. So, they live to be over 100, and then Andrew has his heart problem. We're like, there's got to be something going on with your food. He's claiming it's
We
hereditary.
don't know yet. It's very, very,
very recent.
very
yeah.
recent.
Yeah.
So
Anyway.
weeks.
Interesting.
Okay, so let's get into into.
Sorry, we went on.
No,
a
no,
whole-
it's
okay, we
fine.
got-
But I want to get into. So you're in this promotional industry with music. There's a lot of alcohol. There's a lot of drinking. You're in the party industry, but you got into health food while you're in the party because concerts, DJs, underground raves. That's drugs, alcohol, and women and men and party. So
Right.
you had the sound mind to think straight and go, okay, I could either be a drug addict with everybody else, but yet try and do this promotion, or I could not keep my business mind. I like health food. So you went the other way. You were still in the industry, but you went, because there's a lot of people that get in that industry and then get buried and then die. So you decided to stay in that industry, but yet be healthy in one side. So you don't have addictive personality. You must not have an addictive personality, or do you? Or did you ever have a problem?
That's a good question. So no. I guess the broad scope is, first of all, getting in the music industry and hospitality industry for many people is about the love of music and the vicarious experience of people having an amazing time.
Yeah.
Producing moments that people will never forget, memories, and creating an environment that people that enhances, it's therapeutic, it enhances their existence in ways that their normal life and the daily grind doesn't. And so, but ultimately for me, and I think most of the people I've worked with, it's the love of music, something about that
Okay.
universal language.
Okay, so it's not just drugs, alcohol, and rock and roll.
So I was very
sex, drugs, and rock and roll is what they're saying.
I was very fortunate. I grew up in a neighborhood in LA where cocaine was huge from the moment I was old enough to know what it was.
Yeah.
I tried it once and I did not like it.
Oh, good, me
So
either.
you got lucky.
Very lucky. I don't.
Yeah.
I'd like to say it was a special awareness,
But
or some
higher power.
some higher mindset. But I just didn't like it. And drugs in general were just not my thing. I don't know if it was a health consciousness or how it changed my chemistry.
that's how I am.
was
I've never been.
Andrew's
interested.
never been a drug
I've
user
never
or
done
alcohol.
anything.
Yeah.
Never smoked, never drank, and I can't say what it was.
Right.
I just didn't want to do it when I was younger. I saw people and I was like, and then I never even cared to try. I've literally never done anything.
Yeah.
So you don't obviously do cocaine now because you
No,
can't be
I
in-
did. That was the one time I did it. I think
Yeah.
I was maybe in high school or something.
And you don't seem like an alcoholic. So.
No, so
I mean, I don't know.
no. So
a closet drinker.
I'm not a big drinker either. I'm not anti, but what I did notice being in the environment and having alcohol available to me for free
24/7.
almost every night of the week that I needed it, or if I needed it, I learned early on that drinking too much was not a good thing. I wasn't a good drinker. I just didn't like, and when you're working in that environment, you're trying to produce something, you take on, it's your job.
It's your environment,
So
yeah.
there's a certain amount of, you have to be accountable and responsible.
Yeah.
And when I would drink too much, I would veer too far away from that. So
Yeah.
I eventually just developed this ability to not need to drink or party in these
Smart. You
environments.
made those right decisions.
And you kind of get a contact high when
Yeah.
you're in it.
Oh, no,
and
Andrew does too.
I go out
vicariously-
to clubs and bars all the time.
Yeah.
But I don't drink. I don't
Yeah,
smoke.
you can
So
kind
I get
of
it.
vicariously live through people.
Yeah, oh,
People
yeah.
think that maybe you're high because you're in a vibe, but
All my whole life.
They
Yeah,
think he
they're
all
drinks.
the time,
What
like,
do
no.
you- yeah, like
I
nothing.
smoked weed with you. We were all wasted that night. I'm like,
Right.
nope, I was there.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just passed the joint on.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
weed to me, it was cool here and there, but I noticed as I've gotten older, it affects me differently. And I usually get
Oh, you're not a stoner either?
I usually get a
God
ton
dang.
of energy and I need to do things. My
Yeah.
OCD kicks in. So the only time if I was to smoke would be surfing or something very physical where I'm burning it.
Oh, good.
and,
You surf. So you
and
have
I'm
that
able
active
to-
type. Okay.
I can't sit and smoke a joint and just chill. That's not, and so that's not my thing.
Do you think Snoop Dogg sits there after he smokes? No. He does tons of
Well, he's a
crap.
functioning.
He's a functioning literal. Our brother.
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah.
But see, I think paranoia or like there's I wouldn't call it psychosis, but I definitely think that I get more into my mind. And that's why I need a physical focus. There was a
Draw it
time
away from that.
Yeah, so maybe if I'm being creative as well, that might be a bit of a
Yeah.
inspirational kind of chemistry going. But in general, it's not something I do regularly. Drinking, not something I do regularly. I'll have a glass of wine, just kind of
Chill out.
or have a little tequila on the rocks, and I'll sip that the whole night.
You don't need it. You don't need it to function and get through that
No, I
night.
could go.
I was told that a lot of
months will go
mobsters,
by, and I'll be like, "Wow, I haven't."
You-
like,
you've got
someone
your
will be,
dad's
"When's the last time
personality.
you had a drink?"
FYI,
Yeah.
mobsters don't do drugs or drink. They don't shit where they eat.
Usually
they don't drink their own
yeah.
Kool-Aid.
Yeah, I did. My
The
mom,
successful
my
ones
mom-
don't.
Daily Logic Check.
So you never met your dad, but you know what his life was. Your mom lives here. She's still alive, or
No, she passed.
Okay.
So my family was part of a neighborhood in New Jersey, and that was predominantly Italian, Sicilian. That's how it was in the neighborhoods back then. You had your Italian, you had your Irish, and so apparently my biological father, his name was Anthony Fucci.
Oh,
or
nice
no,
name.
Jimmy Fucci.
Jimmy Fucci.
My middle name is Anthony. His middle name was Anthony, I guess. My mom, that was about the only thing that I kept from my mother gave me from him.
Besides your entire DNA.
Jimmy Fucci.
Besides your entire DNA.
Yeah,
by
Jimmy
the way.
Fucci. I have yet to meet anyone from him.
The Fucci family?
Him or the Fucci family.
Really? I'm gonna
Yeah.
Google that.
Yeah. So I haven't looked him up. And he didn't take photos. So I don't even know what he looked like.
Yeah, gangsters
That
aren't.
was
They
how
don't
he
want.
saved his life.
That is kind of weird to never know what your dad looked like.
Yeah.
It'd be know who he is, but not actually be able to see him.
Yeah, it is
It
interesting.
So
is-
your
it
mom
is
just
definitely-
they separated and she moved. What happened?
So the crazy story is, so my mom was young and she grew up in that neighborhood in his world. My grandmother ran one of his businesses, which was like a restaurant bar. I believe it was called the Roxy, if I'm not mistaken, but I could be wrong. And she was part of the inner circle of the guys that would do, the numbers and whatever other illegal stuff that they would do. And my mom grew up in that world. So at some point, and, sorry, Mom, but, he was married and had a family. And the Sicilian Brotherhood, again, I'm only speaking based on what I was told.
Yeah.
I'm not extremely knowledgeable on that world. They don't divorce. Apparently my aunt, who is still here and I spend a lot of time with, she tells me that he was a really great guy to our family. But
good.
at the same time, he was married. And there was a point where my mom became pregnant. She was one of his side girls or his side girl.
Yeah.
I don't really know
This
all the
isn't
details.
a shunned, by the way. This happens all over Orange County.
Yeah,
There's
I
like the wife lives in one neighborhood, and then right next door
my,
is the mistress.
my aunt says genuinely that she believes they were in love, but the reality is he wasn't divorcing, and that there was no future. And then things were it was at a time when the Mafia wars were in full effect.
Oh, yeah.
And she was almost killed multiple times.
Wow.
Crazy stories, great
Wow.
stories, but
So
scary
basically,
stories.
your mom ran until she hit the water and then stopped.
She basically,
That's exactly what I was going to say. She's like, I'm going
She
to
ran
that
as far away
side
as
of
she
the country.
could.
yeah, she was a huge fan of the Gidget movies and the Malibu surfing. And
Oh,
she
yeah,
said, that's
okay.
where we're going.
God.
We went from Jersey to Arizona for a few years, Phoenix.
Yeah.
And then
We went to Phoenix.
headed west. So I moved to Hermosa
how old were
Beach
you when that-
I was like 9,
So you
sixth
moved
grade.
to California when you were 9.
Yeah,
So you're
sixth
almost a
grade.
So
native.
your whole life. So basically,
so I
your whole life.
basically say I grew up there. I wasn't born here. I grew up here or in the
same
LA.
thing.
It was young enough to
I was
where-
born in Arizona, kind of my little kid while I was in Missouri, but Washington is where I spent everything I can remember was
That's
in Washington.
your coming of
So that's
age.
where
yes,
exactly. So California.
Your formative years.
Yes.
more or
I
less.
did. I started doing the math on living in Washington. I only lived there for 5-6 years.
Yeah, you didn't know you had to live
Yeah.
there.
Yes.
So
Anyway.
that's interesting.
No, but I'm doing the
So
math
what
on my
happened
life.
this is another interesting thing, and again, I don't mean to sound like I'm putting anyone down because everybody does what they do for their reasons.
worries.
I believe my stepdad and my mom, they fell in love in Jersey, and that's when they decided to move west together and leave that Mafia world behind. And I guess I'm grateful for that because
Are they out? Are you by yourself?
But what was interesting is they didn't tell me that I had another father. I grew up not knowing that.
When did you find out?
It's a crazy story. So
Oh my God. I wasn't, this is another story we weren't even planning on. So this is
I
great.
know. I'm sorry.
No, this
I've
is
got
good.
a lot of layers.
No. I want to
Are interesting opinions.
reason-
Understand you.
We need to
This is
understand you because then we're going to understand what happened to you and why
Sure.
why it was so significant and how it impacted your life and how
Right.
you're so sane right now.
So maybe. So trying, always trying. It's so they didn't tell me. And one day, my mom was mostly home. She had businesses off and on. She was a badass businesswoman when she wanted to be, but she spent a lot of time home also as a housewife and mom. And she would watch the talk shows. And I walked in, I want to say it might have been Oprah, but it was one of the talk shows. And, I would sit down with her and visit.
Yeah.
And they were talking about families that had children with other people and then would leave that family and go on and start a new family and have nothing to do with the previous kids' family. And I was just like, that is the worst thing someone could do. I was like, I can't believe people do that. That's just horrible. And I was going on about that. And all of a sudden my mom started bawling out of nowhere. And I look over, I'm like, Mom, what's wrong? What's going on?
How old were you at this time?
20.
Oh, so you're adult. Okay.
And she was upset, really upset. And she was like, I have to tell you something.
You're like, what?
I'm like, what's going on? And she's all, your father's not your real father.
Why?
Oh my
It just
God,
came out. She just started telling me the whole thing, and she explained it, and and for some reason I was very understanding.
You're like,
You know,
okay.
I was like, it's
Shocked,
okay.
but able
it's
to-
okay. I understand. A part of me probably somewhere subconsciously questioned, because I didn't look anything like.
Yeah,
my
she's got like
stepdad.
a big nose. And
Now that you know is your stepdad.
I didn't look anything like my stepdad, but whether it was naive or whatever it was, I just was going along with, I was 3 years old when my stepdad adopted me. So my last name Carroll is his last name.
so you didn't even know
He's
he was
also
adopting
passed away, but
wow.
but I just had no clue,
Wow.
And so it was interesting because my brother, who's a couple of years younger than me, like three years younger than me, he's from my stepdad. So
Oh, so you have a half brother then? He's officially your half
He
brother.
thought-
yeah,
Or
but
is
I
your whole
never
brother?
looked at him as a half brother.
What I mean is he is actually technically,
and
but yeah.
But he's your brother.
Interestingly, he was the first one I thought of. Like, I can't wait to tell him because he didn't know. I said, my brother's name is Jason.
We have an extended family, and then you're like, oh wait, it's a mobster. Probably,
Well-
probably not that exciting.
Well, of course, just in defense of my mom, her reasoning, and my stepdad, who once she said, he knows, come home, so my stepdad left work and came home right away to try and
Make everything
mitigate
okay.
this situation. You're like,
Yeah,
oh my
all
my
god.
mom told me, she said, I really need you to understand that you were the type of kid that like would run away. And
type
we
A.
were afraid that and you also were emotional and sensitive, and so we were worried that you wouldn't respect your stepdad because you have another dad. We were worried that you would constantly throw that out at
Yeah,
us.
that makes sense.
You're not
never,
my dad.
I'm going to live with my real dad. Or,
I never thought of that. That's probably
and then
a good
she
idea.
said, and the added, component here is that if you understand the life, we didn't want you to have any connection to that whatsoever, because I didn't want to lose you to that
of course
life.
not.
And she went on to tell me some. My friends say you should write a book or a
Ooh, I
script.
can't wait to the next
The
podcast.
stories, not to say that there aren't tons of ridiculous mafia stories. They've done
But all of
it.
them
No,
are
but
good.
Netflix signs up everybody that's in the mafia.
But
So if
these
you got
stories are
ties,
so good that
It's like
I'm like,
Indians in the reservation.
it's
We got mobsters,
Yeah.
mobsters' wives. We got mobsters'
They're
kids.
really
we got,
great. And
Ooh, I can't wait.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
and
sell you to Netflix.
I'm sure there are many kids, that grew up in this way, where they had mafia. But he was the boss of the neighborhood, of the area, and the stories are pretty cool, or not cool. I don't know if cool's the best.
Yeah, I
way.
know, but it is. It is now that it's the past and it's over.
Yeah,
If
The
you have-
Sopranos is no longer. We need a new
it's
story.
a fascinating look into human nature, societal
Absolutely.
and cultural, realities.
Absolutely.
Whether good or bad, for better or for worse,
It's the human condition, and it's interesting.
It's very interesting, and there's so many walks of life that apply there. So that being said, that changed everything in a lot of ways. She's all, please don't tell your brother till he's 16. I'm like, what? Until he's 18. He was
But
17.
you told him right away.
I said, I'm calling him right now.
I knew it.
Because there was there's a divide there. There was something that we weren't alike very much in many ways, and I just felt like
You needed
that
to
would
open
bring
that
us
can of worms.
closer.
yeah,
and
like, hey, this
it was
is why,
something
so
I
we're
wanted-
okay.
Yeah, that he didn't know, and I didn't know that now we know. So I feel like it could close a gap that was important,
Yeah.
because we loved each other, obviously, but it was just very interesting, and so that was my first thought, and then
And you were 20 at the time.
20, yeah.
So-
So of course I told him right away, and then he's all, "Gosh, that just
Makes
everything
sense.
makes so
So
much
much sense now.
Like it was like an epiphany.
Yeah. It's like, why do your ears look like that and my ears?
It's interesting, and so it's we're still very close, and
So you opened up about your family, and then this all happens, and But now you're in California. You got your stepdad, who's your parents are both.
He raised me.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
he raised you, so he's basically
He's your dad. He's
I
your
mean,
real
he's your
dad.
dad.
He's my dad. And so when he came over, you nailed it. When he came over, he told me, and he said, he pulled me aside too, and he's like, hey, I just want you to know, and I respect your mom and her wishes, but I wanted to tell you. I'm just letting you know between you and me.
Yeah.
I feel like I need to let you know I wanted you to know. But I respected why and everything and all your mom's reasons. And it was your mom. So that's what we did.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's cool. I go, you're my dad.
Yeah.
You raised me. I'm not changing my name. I'm
No, no.
none of that's changing. I appreciate it. You know, it just made, if anything, it made me appreciate him more.
Yeah.
And it also made me understand what kind of a dad he was, because I didn't really.
So he was solid for you.
Yeah, he was solid, but we weren't super close, which is weird. Him and my brother were closer, and my brother was his real son.
This is
But I
understandable.
never really consciously thought about it. So it gave me knowledge and tools to be able to understand more. Obviously, there's a ton I don't understand, and I never will.
Yeah.
But I came to the conclusion that, I'm not going to go seeking him out. So my mom called. She's all, do you want to meet him if he's willing to meet you?
Yeah.
My mom called my biological dad. She called his mother, believe it or not. And so I was 20 at the time. He was probably in his mid 40s, late 40s or so, maybe closer to 50. But his mother told my mom that he died of a heart attack. So I don't even know if that's true or not. 'Cause
I
you
doubt
think,
it.
Here's this kid who's now 20. Do you want to meet him? He knows now. Like the whole family knows I know. Up until then, we never communicated to any of that side. So
He could still be out there.
he
Yeah.
could still be, and there was a point where I am not going to chase someone who doesn't, like I already have a life with a like it's just I didn't care.
Daily Logic Check.
So how did you meet the woman that, so you ended up being in a relationship?
Yeah, so what I'll say is my thought process based on my experience, especially after 20, because I was always trying to figure,
who are you?
trying
What
to
do you wanna
figure,
do?
I'm still trying to figure it
Yeah,
out.
So is he. And so am I.
It's
hey, we just started a podcast. We don't have any clue what we're doing. So we're
you
trying to
would think
figure
at my
ourselves
age
out.
I'd have it all dialed in and figured out, but unfortunately that's not the case, and I can't pretend it isn't. So I go with it.
Right.
I'm always trying, so that's
Yeah.
the best I can bring to the table. But
So you're looking for, or were you ever looking to get
yeah, well,
married
I
or be in a
wasn't
relationship?
sure. So here I am, and I'm learning about the world. I'm a little bit of a hypersensitive, and starving for knowledge about everything, human nature, because of the career path that I chose. I don't even know if I'd qualify as a career, but I guess it does.
Pays the bills.
It's very social science, cultural, human science related. If you're looking at it in terms of every aspect, hospitality, service, there's a lot of social
Psychology
science
behind
and
it, yeah.
a lot of human behavioral.
Customer service is behavioral science.
Yeah, it's
Like,
a study of people and
Yeah.
what they do and why they act the way they act, what they enjoy, what makes them feel good. And you're marketing that and you're trying to make a living off of it. So I find that very fascinating and interesting in its own way. And through that, many years of that, you learn things. And the interesting thing is there was a point there when I was 25, 26.
You met a woman.
Where I had a lot of success in the event world that I was going, and
Women were everywhere.
Yeah, I was everywhere, but I was hyper focused. I went from my parents not knowing what to do, and my parents thinking I'm lazy with no drive and no motivation, to I'm a workaholic and I'm hiring my mom and I'm making more money than they made.
Right.
And again, that's not to make a claim of any kind of,
Right.
importance other than you can be a lost soul or not sure who you are at 18, 19, get kicked out of your house because school may not feel right, even though you like to learn. All of these variables that, you're not following a standard path. But there's something within you, right? And so I think a lot of young hearts and minds and souls have this dilemma where they look at what's typical, the standard parameters, and they're like, I'm not fitting there. I'm not finding what I thrive. And one of the things I know about myself is if I don't enjoy it, I'll be able to do it to pay some dues, stick my nose to the but I have to have
you have to have that satisfaction.
It has to feel like
enjoying
I'm getting. I have to have a goal to do that. If I'm gonna,
okay, let's get back to the woman, hun. Okay,
okay.
Let's go back.
I apologize.
So
yeah.
no, don't apologize at all. So I want to.
My point is I never thought I would have kids.
Okay, that's what. Okay,
I'm so sorry that it took that long to get to that.
That was not in your wheelhouse.
Yeah, all of these things are culminating in a way where I'm like, I don't want to bring kids in this world.
But how did you end up doing that then? You just met somebody.
It wasn't
and
planned.
It just happened.
I met a girl.
And do you still know her?
At one of my events, and we had a very physical connection. There was a lot of attraction and chemistry. She was from a neighborhood close to mine. We knew some mutual people, but we obviously had never met before. She was beautiful, and so we
worked.
We went in that direction.
How long ago was this that you met her?
I was, I believe, 25, and she was 22.
Okay,
maybe 21, 22. So it was a long time ago.
And then you met her.
30 years or so ago.
So you had a child at how old? It was a boy, right?
When my son, his name was Kobe, was born, I was 26.
Okay,
so I met her
Wow,
about
so you met
9
her
months. Once I knew I was going to be a dad, I called her and I said, I want to be involved every step of the way.
So then you
So
were
I went
involved.
to the Lamaze.
Don't look at me. I never had a kid.
Lamaze.
He looks at me like
I went
this.
to all the ultrasounds. As soon as I found out it was a boy,
Yeah.
I started thinking in terms of all these things. As soon as he was born, I got an life insurance
that's
policy.
so cool.
I all of a sudden I started getting into this mode where and that's where what I meant by your accuracy, because I wanted a different way of connecting with my son than maybe what happened to me. Yeah. And also my parents were kind of like hippies. So I don't even think they were prepared. I can say for certain they weren't prepared to be parents. Like in the ideal sense, they were winging it. And so my son and I had an amazing relationship. He was just on point and outstanding, just the most beautiful, sweet boy, and just amazing.
Okay, so
sports.
you're saying
we did
past
everything.
tense. Let's
Yeah.
let me get into it a little
Well,
bit.
yeah,
because the reason what we want to talk about was what had happened to you, and what you told me when we were sitting on that couch at Stagecoach. We weren't at the festival, but at my house. Touched my heart because Andrew and I have a sister that's homeless on heroin, and we've tried for years and years and to get her off of the drug. And she's been to many rehabs. We have stolen her off the street. We have tried to kidnap her from trailer parks. So we've tried to, she's had 2 children during all this nightmare that we've tried to make sure they were sheltered from this disaster. And my mom, she's aged 20, 30 years since my sister. My mom looks tired, and she's
the stress of it.
Just the stress of it. And just to get that phone call of she's fine, she's gone now. And
literally we're waiting for
that phone call.
Every day my mom is stressing because it's it feels inevitable. Yeah. Because of the path my sister took.
And so bringing you on today, it actually happened to you. And I know it's hard for you to talk about, but I want to know what led up to that. And, you have this great relationship with your son, and you're not together, but nobody's married anymore. So tell us a little bit about what happened.
So up until he was a teenager, he was on, I guess, what you would consider on point by society's standards.
Until he was a teenager.
Until he was a teenager. And then there were some things when his mother met his stepdad. He was in the Coast Guard, so they had to move away. And the first time they moved away, he was God, I want to say 5, so he was young. And it was the first time.
How far away is
Maybe
away?
6. Actually, I'm sorry, maybe around 6 or 7. And they moved like up to Northern California.
So then all of a sudden now you
all
don't get
the
to
way-
see your son every day.
Yeah, and that's the first time I'd ever been away
Wow,
from,
that must
from
have
my
been
son. It was pretty hard. And and when you raise children in separate households, you're raising them you're trying to raise them in sync, but you have this guilt factor that when they're with let's say your daughter's with your mom, the moment they come back to you, right? You just, you feel guilty because the whole time they're away from you. So any of the learning and the lessons, or maybe the even disciplining that maybe should, if you're in under the same roof. And I always advise parents who raising their kids separately, communicate and let them know where you left things off every week, or however your time frame is, so you understand like what happened this week. And I had to learn that over time. Unfortunately, the gaps, I think about them all the time. I think, God, why, but my parents would let me walk anywhere. I could have gotten kidnapped. I almost was molested one time. That was 11 years old, cruising around by myself and at the beach, And they were that's just how they did things. They didn't know any better, to be honest.
So you're like, I need that communication.
I watched my son like a hawk. But when they go to the other
You have to trust them
parents'
because they're
house,
doing the same thing.
there's a point where you almost have to just hope for the best. It's really a shame. And there'd be times where, they know how to work the two too. Once, I don't know how old your daughter is, but at a point he learned how to manipulate in a way
Andrew's went through this.
Yeah, and you have to be aware of that. I had to learn that the hard way too.
Yeah, and with me, I communicate with my daughter's mother really, really well.
That's so
Anything
great.
that happened that week of interest, like we literally, even it's just in nature. Like I don't want it to be 2 separate houses where they could do that, because I see it all the time that you get worked against each other. So you had a learning curve on that.
Totally. And eventually it became that way with his stepdad, and we would communicate, and we started to learn things. She would tell me what's going on, but it was in some ways too late in my view. That being said,
At what age?
You could always say what if, or
When you say it's too late, what age?
I felt like and maybe that's just me looking for reasons and answers, and to be able to help other people. I would just say that those are one of the things, whether I'm correct in my analyzation of it or what have you. I feel like,
Just tell people. I think the audience needs to hear what happened. And
well,
before we go,
the one thing that's really important, and I think with your situation, my situation, that they're all different. That's important
There's
for
always
people
circumstances. They're not
Yes.
never the same.
Of course not. But
You can't
we just want to hear
blame-
your story.
No. I guess
you
what I'm
can't
saying.
blame one party.
Right, and you
know?
may have households that are seemingly impeccable, but the chemistry and makeup of a young person and what they're dealing with in their mind and their heart and their soul.
It's
you may have 3 or 4 kids in the family, like you have a family, and they're all different, or
that's our family.
or one child in the family or young adult has an issue that none of the other ones have.
There's also mental illness that you
Well,
don't
that
even
was
know.
the thing with my son that, and it's hard to know because with him originally, and I didn't know this until he was a teenager. So then they moved away again at 13 when he was about to start 12 or 13, about to start high school.
Oh, they relocated him in high school?
Or
before high school?
They were only gone for a year or so the first time at 5. So I was only away from them. Then they moved back to the same area. And because he was that age and he had a little baby brother, we opted to have him go.
Oh, okay. Got it.
But second time around, now he's like 12, and it's time for the stepdad to get relocated again. And we gave Kobe, my son, the choice. Like, you can stay with me because now you're a teenager, or you could go if you would think you would be happier. And he chose to stay. So, and that was only because he was a teenager and all his friends. I don't think
because
it had
that's an
anything to do
influential
with
part
his
in their
mom
lives,
or his
right?
stepdad or anything like
So
that.
he stayed with you.
He stayed with me, but I'm working nights on the weekends,
Oh,
like
no.
Thursday through Saturday.
So now you
at
can't watch
least.
him again.
there are moms who raise their kids without anybody else and do amazing jobs. There are dads who raise their kids and they have very little to no support, right? I noticed how all of what's in my circle helped or could hurt me. My choices, my career, those little things are factors. And so when I moved right down the street from his mom's side of the family that was in the closer neighborhood, so he could be close to them when I was at work.
Yeah.
The problem is he was just old enough and persuasive enough.
To go out.
And they
start
had a
partying.
family of their own to focus on.
So
the
he
grandma would call me. I'd be at work or
so he had
whatever.
freedom to
The
go
school
party.
would call me. He was starting to
There's
act
no
out.
structure.
And I don't know if he, somewhere deep inside, was unhappy that the mom was having a new life or family. Honestly, I don't know. But I think eventually all of that was fine through our communication and effort.
But he's done a lot of transitioning, so there's a lot of turmoil.
There's a lot of
there.
stuff going on,
Yeah.
and
he's a teenager, and now he's got a way to work the system and get some freedom. And you're not around at night because you're
he
working.
tended to lean towards older kids and follow their lead a lot more.
The wrong
than
older kids, obviously.
The wrong older kids.
And you weren't there to actually
I would find
adopt.
out from my neighbors that he was having people over and they were bringing alcohol and stuff in.
And how old was he at the time?
He was 13. He was in ninth grade, so 13, 14.
And how old was he when you got that call?
So he passed away at 23.
I'm so sorry.
So I didn't even know he had drug issues at all. He was dabbling and doing things, crazy things that I had no awareness of until around 17, 18.
So he was 5 years into being able
Just like our little sister. I
he
never knew
was
she was pregnant.
keeping it together enough. I mean, he was acting out. I was constantly going through meetings, counseling meetings. But for a good period of time, his mom had a pretty busy lifestyle, work and family of her own. So I had a flexible schedule during normal work hours. So I was the Mr. Mom.
Yeah.
But at night, when
There's
I
a
had
disconnect.
to work, he was free. And he was always on the best behavior. He was always such an amazing, had such a great head on his shoulders, good grades, sports, all the things that you think you'd identify with as
as
a
a good
perfect
kid.
kid.
a positive.
Just like Jared.
Yeah,
almost went
positive.
that way.
But all this other stuff was going on that I had no awareness of. No excuse. I'm just saying it just happened.
Yeah,
That's
well,
how it.
Don't
it
blame
was-
yourself for not
you
knowing.
suck.
Sneaky kids are sneaky
And
kids.
he was good. He
And
kept it under wraps.
You're-
Well.
Was he smoking
I've
weed
learned-
or what was he doing?
He was smoking weed, drinking, and he was starting another kid that moved into our building from another area who's a few years older, exposed him to meth. And
methamphetamine. That is
and
the
so
worst.
eventually over time he developed an addiction to meth.
And you guys didn't know?
the problem was he wasn't a good drinker either, and the drinking led to
Bad decisions.
meth because
Yeah.
he would start to go through in his mind. And then over time, once we started to, the first overdose he was lucky. He had people in the room that knew CPR and that called 911 that weren't afraid. They were
How
in a
old was he?
hotel room, which happens very frequently. A group of people will go to a hotel room
Right.
and they'll use.
We know that
Right?
Oh, yeah.
very, very, all too well.
How old was he the first time?
The first time was maybe 2 years, so he was probably 21. And it just caught me off guard.
You didn't
caught us
even know
all
he was
off
using.
guard. And what had happened was the same thing happened. That happened when he actually passed. Was he was relapsed, like he had stopped using meth. Some of us were aware, his mom was a little more aware, and he was trying to stop. So he went clean for a while. And he was doing well.
Did you send him to rehab or he just
And
did it
then
on his own?
he hadn't gone to rehab yet.
Oh, okay.
And he relapsed, I guess. And what happened was he was up for a few days. And his mind and his body were just like reeling. And some of the people in the room had heroin. And so
Which brings you down because
yeah,
brings
so
you up.
he
Oh,
was
so heroin
like,
brings you down?
I wanna calm down and go to sleep.
Oh, because he hadn't slept and he wanted
yeah,
to
and he
sleep.
was like, I need
and
to
that's
shut it
standard.
off.
Nowadays, that's standard.
Wait, they don't take sleeping pills? They take
no,
heroin?
they do meth.
Well, that
to
was
go up,
what was
heroin to
in
go
the
down.
room,
Okay, so
and
that was in
people
the
with
room.
him is probably just the convenience of
And
it.
the two of them help the withdrawals from the other one. So if you're having a withdrawal because you don't have any meth, heroin will make you feel better until you get more meth. So it's a kind of a hand-in-hand kind of
Interesting.
thing.
Isn't that what our sister did? She's
Yes.
meth, big time meth.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
so-
it's more heroin, but yeah.
Right. And
okay.
so he took the heroin, and dosage is also very important with fentanyl and all these things too. But in reality, he wasn't a heroin user, so it wasn't his thing. So what happened was it shut down his lungs and his organs. And so
Wow.
he died basically.
He flatlined right
He
there.
flatlined, but fortunately the people in the room were conscious and weren't scared enough to not call 911. They gave him CPR and they called 911. They brought him back to life. The paramedic who worked on my son, right after they saved him, they called his mom first and said, "Just so you know, my son died this exact way. You are lucky that we were here and that the people in the room called us, number one, because they rarely do out of fear.
Wow.
And someone knew enough CPR to keep him."
How many years ago was this? Like, was it just recently? I mean, I know you said
No, so
21 and 23.
my son was 23. He would be 31 right now.
So this was about 10 years ago?
Actually, June is the anniversary of his death.
So this was about a
Late
decade
June,
ago?
so we just passed
Okay.
his death. So it would be 30. He would be 31, but he died when he was 23. So 9 years.
Okay. So the first time he overdosed, he got lucky.
He
which
was
is about
21.
So it was about 10 years ago.
But he got
yeah,
lucky.
Yeah, it was
he
about
got
11
lucky.
years ago, 10, 11 years ago. So that's when we all were like intervention time.
Oh, absolutely.
So the paramedic said, you need to do something. So we were like, absolutely. So we went into the first rehab situation. It wasn't the greatest. Unfortunately, a lot of rehabs have a lot of nefarious activities going on.
Yeah, they some of them even give them drugs. I'm like,
Yeah, and coincidentally, he came out of that with it wasn't good. So we found another rehab in Laguna Hills, actually, right by the 1,000
Which one
Steps.
was it?
I'm trying to remember the name. It's a really nice location overlooking the ocean.
Is it the one that Anna? Oh no, Anna went to
Dana Point.
Dana Point. Yeah.
And he went to that, and he did very well there. But some of the people there, he wasn't ready to leave. He's like, "Dad, I'm not ready. I'm not ready to go back to. I know I'll use again." But our insurance, we couldn't afford it. It was
so
an expensive
expensive.
place. I wasn't making. None of us were making the kind of money to be able to pay for it, and that breaks my heart because you never think money. Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. You never think that.
But as a man, that's one of the reasons why not having kids was even a part of my plan, because I know, and I wasn't foreseeing any of this, but growing up with the family I did where money was always an issue for everything. It was never not an issue. And how stress and all these things, and it wasn't, my stepdad was the hardest working person on the planet. So no one could say it wasn't due to hard work. No one could say that it wasn't, it just was what it was. And they weren't the smartest business people. And that wasn't for any, by choice, they just didn't evolve as super smart financial planners. So I guess, a part of me feels like less of a man and less of a dad, even though there was a time where I was making a lot of money. So the first part of his life, he had never wanted for anything.
Yeah.
But circumstances happen, and I could delve into all of that crazy stuff. I could have never predicted happening that changed the dynamic of my career and my income. Completely went from doing extremely well to working for $10 an hour to make ends meet, because my whole life changed with my career and all these other things while I had my son. So I was still a dad.
So when he said he wanted longer, it wasn't financially available to
he had
keep
done
him
the
there.
31 days or
And that's
whatever
all
it
you could
was,
afford.
and they're like, in
The
order
rehab
for
just let him
your
out?
insurance is done.
Yeah.
So they just
Basically-
let you
But
out?
this is, so 10 years ago.
Yeah, you couldn't do it. Your insurance is basically like, this is all you got. And,
Yeah,
you
and
know,
10 years ago, that's how it's a lot better now because they're actually seeing. Maybe now it might be different, and because of
It's
stories like
possible.
this,
It's possible.
is the reason why it's slowly changing. Because if so, what you're saying is you think, obviously hindsight, you don't know, but you thought maybe if I could have afforded to keep him in there longer, maybe he'd still be around
that's one of the
today.
maybes that I think about on a regular basis. It's a challenge, but I'm able to get through those days where, you know, and I'm sure your mom and you guys go through this, even in your situation. But once a child passes, there's, you know, if you're a parent who's being honest with yourself, you can't help but to take blame. I would be lying to
Pointing
myself.
fingers at yourself or
Guilt.
anybody.
I can name every moment that I've seen in my mind
That maybe could have made a
every day,
difference.
or not every day, but it's just still there. It never goes away. Or those moments where, you know, you have to find the mindset and an understanding that ultimately always lands in order. Because, you know, sure, I could commit suicide. You know, when things get real bad, I could just say, I'm
done.
It's my
Check it
fault.
out.
I could have done better, and I can dwell on that. You know, that was the most important purpose in my life, and I failed at it, you know, and my son should be here, you know. All of those things, they happen. So instead of denying them, I allow them to happen, but keeping a positive mindset and always going back to, what would he want
Yeah.
me to do? Why am I still here? And there are plenty of times in my life where I'm like, I should have been
Gone.
been me
You're like,
and
why am I
yeah.
still
and I'm
here?
sure anyone,
Yeah.
you guys,
Yeah.
so many people can relate to that. If you've had a certain life path.
We don't know how we're still here.
Yeah.
So we started this
The
podcast
amount of times.
because we're like, well, maybe we're just supposed to be giving back somehow. Because
Yeah.
we don't know how we're here. 'Cause
Right,
We have
and
had so much addiction in our family with people, and our dad's a massive alcoholic. He died of alcoholism. I mean, there's just so many. We don't know why you're here. So we know why we're here now. We're here now because
Yeah.
you're here. That's why.
So I try and believe that, and
Yeah.
I focus on that, and life is such a blink of an eye, you guys. You know that, right?
Oh, yeah.
And it's like
Absolutely.
if he is somewhere, that I'll be with him.
Well, he's watching you right now.
Right,
obviously.
and I did again another conversation, but I did go to a medium 2 years after he passed, and that was a whole incredible experience.
Oh, you went to a medium. So
I
you,
went to a medium. Yes.
I would do the same.
it really
when
helped.
our sister passes, which it's inevitable. I think.
Well,
that,
hopefully that isn't inevitable, but it's good that you're prepared for that. But at the
prepared.
same time, I've had friends ask me, "Can you talk? Can we get together for lunch?" And my son or my daughter just happens to be there, and I always wonder, like, I lost my son. Why do you think I'll be helpful? And they're like, "No, we do think you'll be helpful because I could say the same things." Like, you could say something to your sister, right? You could say something to your sister. Your mom could say something to your sister. I could say the exact same thing, but
it
it's
just
going to
is
be received differently.
Differently, yep.
Yeah.
So as a parent who's lost their son, now my stepdad ended up going from building houses in for the Jacksons in Beverly Hills to being homeless, to overdosing on heroin.
Your
to being
stepdad
a heroin.
did too?
Yeah. My mom was a weed smoker and a cigarette smoker. She wasn't a drinker.
So there's
But
addiction in your
my
family.
stepdad
Oh.
had alcoholism, but he handled it pretty darn well until the heroin thing. It started with cocaine and then partying with all the big time contractors in Beverly Hills, and then it just took him by storm. He was he had one of the highest IQ on record in all military service. That's how gnarly my stepdad was.
Yeah.
I don't have his genes. But that being said, it's not a matter of intelligence. It's not a matter of your heart. It's sometimes you have psychosis. Sometimes my son, I'll give you a perfect example. I still to this day, because you go dark.
Oh, I don't know what I'm gonna do.
My son went dark where I would look at him and I like, I don't recognize you, you know? And when he was using it, it would just get darker and darker. I'm like, who are you, you know? And he didn't want to face me, or when he did, it was usually not the best circumstances. Although we always stayed in touch, always said, I love you. We never got so far apart, but he lived a life that he didn't share with me. The last time I saw him, he took me out for Father's Day. That was the last time I saw him. He wanted to take me to lunch. Pretty amazing. I feel lucky.
Wait, you went to Father's Day with him?
Yeah, that was the last time I saw him. And then he passed away probably 6 days later.
Wow.
Because he was doing his thing, and I'm jumping around a little.
No,
it's okay. No, it's okay.
It's okay.
But what I found fascinating was that when he was clean and sober, so we'll go back to the first he went, and then he went to the second, and he ended up staying clean and sober for, well, not very long after the Laguna Hills rehab, but he didn't go deep into it. So he started to kind of like dabble, but keep a handle on it. But he didn't talk about it. It wasn't like
He didn't go to AA or anything, or
no, he was going to the program. I went with him a few times.
Our sister did the same thing. So she got sober, and then we got her into school. She was becoming a radiology tech, and then later we found out because school was so stressful, she needed a little bit of keep me awake studying energy. So she started doing like not recreational speed and stuff like that to help her get through school, because I'm not addicted. I just need this. And then it took like 5 more years for it to snowball into full blown living on the streets homelessness, and strung out. And so it's just those incremental little steps, and nobody could stop her. Nothing we said or did made a difference. And for one, they're really good at hiding it. So by the time you even know, it's already
sneaky.
way.
She was extremely sneaky.
He was good at it.
Oh, she was good at it. And she is good at it still.
And without
it's only when everything's falling apart, where you're losing jobs, or it's
already too late.
Your behavior is really like, what's going on?
Yeah.
That the people around you notice it.
And it's already in that. By that point, it's too late. It's too late. I mean, it's not too late, but it's like odds of us being able to help, let them help us. Because the difference is, what I've learned is if if a person doesn't want to be helped, there's no amount of rehab that'll help. It's not on the sub, but it is Chris Farley, the comedian. He went to rehab like 10 times. And the only reason he went is because everybody pleaded him to go to rehab. He didn't want to get sober. So he didn't. So no matter what anybody said, no matter how much rehab, he never wanted to get sober, so it didn't work. And our sister, she doesn't want to get sober, so you can't force him. I mean, it's illegal to literally put him in jail until they sober up.
Yeah, that was the thing. Even though he was a young adult by age, we couldn't make him go.
Do anything.
So it's not.
He wasn't emotionally, and obviously, we all have different chemistries.
Yeah.
So, when I take a drink or get drunk over a period of time, it's going to affect me differently than you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I tell my daughter that all the time. I'm like, here's the thing. Your friends, they might be able to get drunk, smoke weed, vape, and then just not do it. But you've got addiction in the family. You could literally end up like your aunt. It's mean, but I'm not gonna not lie. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. I'm gonna be like, for all you know, you have one beer and you turn into an alcoholic and you die in a car. We don't know that, and you don't know that, and it literally could kill you. So me as an adult, at a very young age, I thought that could be me too. So I just didn't ever do anything. So, because for all I know, I'm a horrible heroin junkie, but since I've never done it, I will never know that that's who I really am, and I'll never take that path. So that's what I'm trying to convince these kids, that it's so simple. Like, there could be 10 people that could get away with it, but that not necessarily you. It could be you, that all of a sudden it just consumes your life and you're like your aunt.
And it's interesting because growing up, we would use terminology like, oh, look at that tweaker.
Look at drug addict, that tweaker.
Yeah, tweaker, or meth head, or all these things.
We do the same thing.
I just, and it's easy to portray or interpret that weakness or that behavior as a problem with the person that isn't an understandable or a possible problem that any one of us could have, or any one of our family members.
Well, you can't
could
blame
have.
yourself for what happened. And that's why I know if we get that phone call, I can't. I've done everything in my power to help her. So I know that if I get that phone call, I am going to live with guilt. Like, I could have done this, we could have done that, but we've done so much that I feel like we're okay.
One thing that we have, I wouldn't say a benefit, but she is older. She's been doing this for a very long time, and we've had the time to try for years to get her sober. You didn't.
Yeah,
you had
you
a
did.
short
You had a
window
short
from
window.
when you knew there was a problem
Yeah.
to when it was too late.
Yeah.
So you didn't, like us, we've gotten lucky enough
We had a long window.
that we've been trying for years. So you know how you would have kept trying. If you would have had the opportunity, you'd have kept trying. Well, we've been trying for 20 years now. So it's not a benefit, but we know that we've done everything we can to help her. And she's an adult, and this is the decision she's made. And if she doesn't make it, we have had the time so we can live with ourselves knowing that we tried. You didn't have that.
Sure.
From when it happened to when it was over was so quick that you didn't get the opportunity to try. Okay, maybe that didn't work. Let's try this. That didn't work. Let's try this. Because you never know if you have the chance. And that's the difference between our experience and yours, because everybody's is different.
No, it was tough. And I know if he is in some dimension that he is, like Elizabeth said, he's watching or listening or what have you, because, we only use so much of our eyesight. We only use so much of our brain. Dogs can see and hear things that we don't. Kids have sensory perceptions when they're young that they lose as they get older because of societal parameters or whatever the reason being. But I will never say never, and the possibilities are there, and my medium experience definitely
So you
opened
recommend
I was pretty skeptical. Let's put it
Really?
that way. Yeah.
I would totally
And
do
I
that.
come from a background like figure it out, sink or swim kind of mentality.
Yeah.
And with my son, I always had this confidence that you're going to be fine.
Yeah.
This is just a little hiccup.
A
Listen,
phase.
the way-
It's a phase. You're going to be fine.
But
And even though I cared, the combination of not being able to communicate with them on a level that is helpful, because they're not only, they feel embarrassed, they have all their own things going on, but they're also angry, and they also don't think you understand, because I have no drug history on that level. I would tell him
circumstances could be anything.
So I guess for what I'm getting from what you're saying is it would have been better to somehow figure out a way to know your son or have him tell you sooner. I mean,
I wish I knew the first time that it happened.
Yeah, as a parent, my goal is to try to love my daughter, but somehow, hopefully, get her, if she does start down that path, that maybe I'm lucky enough that I've tried my best, that she'll actually confide in me, and I won't just get mad at her. I'll figure out how I have maybe get that one little chance sooner, and then before that road forks too much, I can put her back on that road. Because I've heard this style of like, God, if I could have just. So I mean, obviously I could be failing, but I got to try.
No, and I'll be honest. I tell people that they ask me, what do we look for? Now I've learned.
In hindsight, you're like, oh.
I was completely clueless. I'll be honest, very ignorant. And still there's a lot of things I'm ignorant to, but having gone through this experience now, I tell them who they're hanging out with is everything.
It is true. You are
that
the people
one
you hang out with.
chance encounter can change
Correct.
the course of everything.
So
that.
So with my sister, she had a best friend, which was our neighbor, and I still talk to her today. And we just talked just the other day, and she's like, I remember when your sister started hanging out with this girl. I was like, Anna, she's bad for you. You shouldn't do it. But then I was in my own little world, and I didn't intervene. And that's literally when she went downhill, and she feels guilty, and she blames herself that she didn't intervene.
But sometimes even if you say that, it's not gonna.
No, it's not
they're gonna
gonna
have to find out. But I have friends and single moms and single dads, and they call themselves a helicopter.
Oh, you helicopter parents.
Yeah, and they're like, I feel horrible that I just hover and constantly.
No,
and
hover.
I'm like, I tell them hover.
Let them make
I
mistakes.
feel like
and
my
then help
parents were not. They were the opposite of
we
hovers.
didn't have hover
I don't
people
know
either.
how I got away with being even
How are we all
half.
sitting here, the three of us?
I wish I didn't follow their lead. I wish I was I think I definitely was more of a hover parent than they were. But, and again, it's not a matter of right or wrong here. It's a matter of what you know, maybe what you believe, or what you.
So what advice if you
I
could,
would say hover.
if you could look into that camera right there and give advice to a parent out there struggling with their child, what would you tell them?
Well, it depends on what phase you're talking about. So are you saying after they're already aware that they have an addiction problem, or before?
How about both? How about give some advice on? No, give it some advice on.
So the pre like
like
just
what are
parenting in general, I would say be hyper aware of, because
Their
I
friends?
was even, I would call I'd be like, where's Kobe? Because his grandma would tell me, oh, he went with so-and-so. So I would
Don't
call
believe
their
him.
parents. There was a time where I was pretty
So be
hardcore.
active with your kids
But
and
once
their
they're
friends.
a teenager, you can only be so hardcore with them, because then that you're worried
push
that
them
they're
away.
just, then they're not going to tell you anything or whatever. And there was a point where I would be not yelling, but I would call his friends' parents. I'd be like, where are your son and my son?
Like, I want to know
You know,
now.
the problem is they're like, they're kids, they're out running around, and and some of this was before cell phones, obviously. So that's again, not excuses, but it's different now with cell phones.
So basically, your advice would be to
My advice would be hover. Please hover. Watch who they're hanging out with. Honestly, be an investigator. Be up in their business. I know teenagers are probably going to hear this and go, no, don't say that. But honestly, there
could
is a
save your
point.
child.
it could save your
It
child's
can
life.
save your child.
Because prior to him being a teenager, similar to my parents, there was a point where I was like, he's a young man. He's going to be fine. He's going to do his thing. I trust him. He's a man. He's a young guy, If I had a daughter, it'd be different. It's very possible. And not to say that you should look at them differently, but just
But you should.
Yeah, you should.
But-
Women can be raped and murdered like any other
yeah,
person.
I mean, boys
but-
can too. That's the
boys
other
can
thing.
too, but I'm
So-
just saying,
Percentage-wise.
percentage-wise.
We live in an interesting society, and I'll try not to go down a whole nother rabbit hole. But
no, I-
in general, I think communication and observation is very important. But in a lot of ways, we've been taught to not be self-aware, or not aware of our parents as much, because like, do as I say, not as I do, because I said so. And there's this whole thing where if kids are hyper aware of who and what and where around them, that also means they're going to have to
Responsibility.
be hyper aware of their parents.
Yeah.
And so there's this gap of hyper awareness that I think is needed. So that doesn't happen in a lot of households, because parents want to
Well, we didn't have it. Three of us didn't have that.
Right, because the reason why is I think at the earliest age possible, it will be helpful. This is more of a general observation.
No, that's fine.
It would be very helpful if everyone could address human nature in a very honest way. I don't think we've evolved as a society to do that.
But I think
It's a shame, because the internet in some ways is doing that, and it's presenting on a scale that we have never experienced before, all the good and the bad, and it's so much for kids to take right now. It's not as though, like, you communicate with your daughter, and when you say, hey, not everyone has the same chemical makeup, and one person may be able to drink and do drugs, and it's not an issue. You may do it, and it's an issue. And how often has that happened in the past? Right? That's a product of now. And we're getting there, but
we're not there yet, Darren and I.
we're not there yet. And so if parents aren't ready for that self-analyzation and awareness to happen at an early age, I would say the next best thing you can do is be hyper aware and sensitive to who's in your children's circle. And this goes for coaches.
Okay.
This goes for because look at what we found out about some of the most renowned the coaches.
So you're,
you know what I'm saying? Like sexual abuse. You don't know if your kid, if your teacher, and a lot of that leads to these problems.
Yeah.
I don't know your family and your family situation.
No,
your
it's
sister,
her surroundings.
But
for
did
sure.
something happen beyond? Like we know? I don't know.
Yeah.
My son, I think, might have had things going on or something happened. You can't help but to know, where I'm like, you think I would know that? But honestly, the way the separate households work and the way that my parenting style once he became a teenager, it's possible that my son was experiencing things that I still to this day have no idea. I know he had psychosis because during his period of being clean, he started to come back to himself, and we started to communicate. It was right before he passed. It's such a shame because I was starting to get to know him, and I know we would have been best friends again, So it's like we were so close, we were starting to talk, but I couldn't push him. That was definitely something I could not do. So he would open up, and he was telling me that he was hearing things, that people he could hear what other people think. And I would be like, oh gosh, that's gotta be the residual. And I say, that's possible. That's residual, Kobe. And I would talk to him, but I would never judge him. He was asking me about things.
Oh, so he was talking to you about
illness.
For a little moment.
Yeah, he was just starting to, and it was the greatest thing. Like that's all because I like to consider myself a communicator, and if there's one thing I could give myself a confident credit for, is I'm an extremely objective thinker. So I'm not one of those people that would judge my son if he was bi or gay or whatever. Obviously, he loved girls. I know that. But, he might have been struggling. And sometimes he would talk to me in ways where I feel like he wanted to talk, but he didn't want to. He couldn't. I was waiting for the next time, because he wasn't someone I could dig. I had to let it happen. Because we were coming off of when he was using, snapping, there wasn't very conducive moments the moment I questioned anything. He would get very defensive, and it was like a teenager in its worst, And that was where I was not prepared as a parent. I probably was more like a buddy at that stage. When the teenage years came on, my parenting skills were very limited. Unfortunately, I'll admit that.
Well, not everybody's prepared for a teenager, hon. I don't think anybody can prepare for teenagers.
No.
I was a nightmare for our mother. I don't know how she survived.
Yeah.
Right. But now that I've gone through this experience, I feel like I almost had the same with the restaurant, the same with so many other things with my parents. And I almost feel like I received my master's in ways of life and living, that now and like you said, maybe there's a way I could use this to help people. I don't know.
You're doing it right now.
Yeah.
So Darren,
hopefully, but I don't know if I'm making an ounce of sense.
Darren, this is amazing.
Honestly, I feel like
and Andrew and I know we're running out of time right now, but I want to have you back. I think that there's a lot more you can give. We only have an hour, and we're an hour and 35 minutes now. I could literally we could go another 2 hours with you.
Sure.
No, absolutely.
But here's what, my takeaway from today is that it's not your fault. And if you have a child struggling with addiction, or you are struggling with addiction or anything, just to reach out, get help, and talk to your parent or talk to your kid, and hover over them if you see one inkling of a bad friend, or make sure that their path is clear and they have stability. They have that structure.
While they're still
right?
under 18, that's the time to do it, because
at all times.
whether they like it or not.
Yes.
And then the problem is a rehab or sending them to a camp. Sometimes I wish I had the resources to just take my son and travel with him.
But
at that time, they don't want that.
Yeah.
They're telling you they don't want that.
So
So
Darren,
it's tough on parents to know what to do.
Daily Logic Check.
I think it's tough on you, and I think that it's very admirable of where you are right now, and you're a testament to a parent, and if our going through what you've gone through. I want to thank you so much for talking to our audience today,
and being here today,
and just
Thank
being
you.
here today in general. I want
I'm
you
willing
back
to talk
because there's
about this.
so much more. We didn't even get into it, but we got to know
there's
you
a
and
lot.
your history, and now the next phase, we want to get to know how you are today and how you cope. I think the next podcast will do
Yeah,
with you.
I'm so
is
sorry
coping.
for going all
No,
down.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
No.
I don't even
But
know if I
Andrew
made
and
any sense for
I actually
any-
got you a little something special. They wrapped this up for you, so I want you to open it on camera.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a little something, but it's a special gift that I got for you. That I want you to open.
Well, thank you for having me.
No,
and
and
I
I
really want to maybe be useful. And
you
if there-
not maybe you are useful.
Absolutely
Just
are.
talking about is useful.
Picking your brain.
And that's a
maybe
little,
we should have a script next time.
No,
a guideline,
Darren, no,
so
not
I
at all,
don't.
not
No,
at all.
no, it's okay.
That's a little gift that
That's
I
what's
want.
good about a podcast. Is this what it is?
Yeah, and Darren, this is all what it's supposed
Thank
to be.
you. I
Don't
appreciate
even.
it.
You gave us way more than we
It
thought.
was therapeutic and it was nice to talk. Thank you for
Yeah.
allowing
No,
me.
absolutely.
But this is also going to be therapeutic for you. I wanted you to have this so you could go get it engraved and put
I'm
something in the
shaking.
back of it. And I thought it would be a beautiful token that you could put on your dresser or put it somewhere in remembrance of your moment that you spoke to your son on this podcast.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It's a love ring.
Oh, wow. I can hang
It's
it
a
on
family.
my neck
You could
too?
do it, and you can get it engraved
it's
on the
beautiful.
inside.
Thank you so
And
much.
You're welcome. I asked the lady at Tiffany. I said, "This is who it is," and she goes,
didn't have to do
She
that.
goes,
That's
"Get him the
really
ring, and he
sweet.
can engrave it with his son's name." And I'm like, "Oh my god!" And I almost cried when she gave it to
That
me.
is really
She didn't give it to me,
awesome.
but I want to thank you for being here, and for our viewers today. We normally wouldn't conduct a podcast like this. We're a lifestyle podcast, and I think this has a lot to do with lifestyle, and I think it needs to be talked about, and there's a lot of families struggling out there. So if you're struggling with addiction, we're going to have some links on, or you know anybody struggling with addiction, we're going to have some links on the video on where you can call and get help, or who you can call, or links to actually rehab websites that can like guide you what to do. Because Andrew and I didn't know what to do. Darren didn't know what to do. None of this is our fault. The drugs have taken a hold of these people, and it's not your fault either. So thank you for watching today, Darren. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for being here.
And we
Thank
can't
you
wait
for
to having
having
you
me.
back. And peace, love, and happiness.
Daily Logic Check.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Daily Logic Check. I'm Elizabeth Vargas, your host, with my co-host, Andrew Vargas. If you like what you saw, you like what you see, click like, subscribe, follow us, and support us on Patreon. Peace, love, and happiness.
Daily Logic Check.